Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Date today is April 16, 2025. Time in Texas about 3 p.m. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share, and for hitting the like button. That helps my channel to grow. And before I begin this segment, I would like to review a little bit of history. About 2,000 years ago, our Messiah, Savior, King, Jesus Christ, laid down his life on the cross. And as he did so, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." So he is our role model for forgiveness. But this is also our same Messiah, Savior, King who said to his disciples, "Sell what you have and buy a sword." And that was to defend the disciples against their enemies. And we know that Jesus Christ, or Christians believe, he is the only begotten Son of God the Father. And how did God the Father organize heaven? He had his angels in groups of 3. He had some choir singers and musicians. He had scribes and messengers. And he also had war angels. Apparently, God the Father recognizes that we do have to battle against evil. Excuse me. And now, excuse me, I'll give an update on some of the information I put out this morning about space weather. It was a G3 that we were expecting. The probability that we had several CMEs en route to the Earth. It appears that 2 of the CMEs became cannibal CMEs. That means they combined. So the hit to the Earth is going to be stronger. It's anticipated we could have a strong G4 geomagnetic storm that would give us a KP index of 7 to 8, with auroras possible down to Texas. So that's going on, and this increase in the geomagnetic storm level is possible to affect certain individuals with health issues such as heart. We can have increased pressure on the eyes, increased pressure on the whole body. So if you have neuropathy, you will likely feel it. And I know I had one Patriot subscriber who said his wife always has migraines when there's activity from the sun. So that's what we're seeing. And suspicious observers, yes, states we'll see that today. And it's possible we'll see auroras April 16 to 17. And also, in addition to the CMEs, we're also experiencing plasma filaments from the sun. Now, a while ago, suspicious observers, Ben Davidson, who's now calling his YouTube channel Space Weather, put out some information about the South Atlantic anomaly. The South Atlantic anomaly. So let me do it this way. So we've got the U.S., we've got South America. The South Atlantic anomaly is a dip in the Earth's electromagnetic shield that comes down. Years ago, it was said to be 120 miles above Earth. I believe it's much, much lower than that. And as is typical, the government stops putting out information. Oh, it's going to be too scary to the people. We can't let them. Okay. South Atlantic anomaly, which is split. I put that out about 2 years ago over to Europe. It has split over to Africa over to the Canary Islands, and I submit also over to the U.S. a dip in the Earth's electromagnetic shield called the South Atlantic Anomaly. And we do currently have ongoing a pole shift on the Earth. So any activity we see from the sun hitting the Earth, we already have several anomalies on the Earth that will increase the impact of what the sun is sending. So it's good to pray and ask God for certain things to take. We know there's a lot of natural remedies for people. Okay, now we'll go on. We'll move from the sun to war. So we have this. Hal Turner's intel. The Ukraine parliament had a vote either late yesterday or early this morning. And they all voted according to Zelensky directives to extend martial law, to have no elections, to continue a forcible draft of all breathing males and females inside Ukraine. And apparently Zelensky wants now a vote to move the Ukraine government to a state of dictatorship. And we have this. So the vote in the parliament in Ukraine, 357 voted yes to Zelensky's demands. There was one no vote, and that was the Ukraine parliament member Oletsky Homotaraka, who said, "This is slavery without a deadline." Then Zelensky's top media communicator, Petrov, who's been receiving money from the U.S. AID, we know that's gone away, and personally I believe President Trump needs to understand Zelensky is now threatening to assassinate members of the Ukraine government, and Zelensky and Budanov, the head of Zelensky's intel arm, have had assassins inside the U.S. since last year, with their number one target being you, President Trump. So we see Zelensky, psychopath, stealing billions of dollars from American citizens, now putting out threats to assassinate the Ukraine government. So Zelensky's communicator, Petrov, went on public social media with a threat to murder Ukraine parliament members who don't want to vote in a state of dictatorship for Zelensky. Petrov said on social media, a no vote will lead up to physical cleanup tomorrow, interpreted to mean assassination. It appears now, this is my conjecture, that Russia's only choice now is to take all of Ukraine. There is no government in Ukraine that either the U.S. nor Russia can negotiate with. We are looking at a government headed up by a psychopath, Zelensky, who is now willing to murder the Ukraine government members who want to vote no to making him a dictator. I say to President Trump, stop the money and the weapons to Ukraine and take whatever measures are appropriate to stop psychopaths who are intent simply on murdering Ukraine citizens and Americans inside America. So that's going on. And now we have this. Now my source on that was Hal Turner's intel. We have from Dr. William Mount, we're seeing tariffs in place, a brilliant move by President Trump economically, and I believe, and others do too, that's a economic plan to take China down. So we see this happening. So we see the US dollar going down, but we see gold going up. So our economy, many are saying, oh, it's going to be destroyed. You don't understand. God is with the American people, and he is with President Trump. Yeah, no weapon formed against us is going to prosper. And we have this. Iran has been using money, and we know the commie Dems inside the U.S. have been sending billions of dollars to Iran. We saw that with O, and we saw that with JB. And Iran used the money to put forth proxies in Yemen, the Houthis, in Israel, Hamas, in Lebanon, Hezbollah, all with the objective to attack Israel. Yes, the commie Dems inside the U.S. have been helping enemies against Israel. So that's been going on. But now, Dr. William Mount puts this forth, that there has been a large increase in population over the past 20 years, which have drained the available water in that area. So that's another social impact that also could be used to, I submit, negotiate. I do believe with Sun Tzu, Art of War, overcome your enemy by any means possible without using your military. Judge Napolitano recently interviewed Larry Johnson, formerly with the CIA, who states NATO is playing with fire, and that Iran, yes, so Larry Johnson is putting this forth, that the U.S. position, we can't allow Iran to get nukes. Now, I have said on many previous videos, I did not buy that story. I believed it was a cover story for what is the real reason the U.S. wants to go against Iran. Technically is unknown to me. I see Iran as a potential and direct enemy to Israel. That's true. But to me, there's more going on than we're seeing on the surface. And the U.S. cover story, we can't allow Iran to get nukes. I've put forth, I did not buy that position. That is just not logical. So Larry Johnson says, yeah, the cover story for the U.S., and that the real issue is oil and Iran's position not to use U.S. dollars for oil deals. I submit that probably comes closer to being the truth. Now, Canadian Prepper, I'll try to link this for you, had a good interview with David Payne. He has both academic and U.S. military background as a weapons and analyst, who says, which is what I said, Iran did not stop their nuke program in 2003, and that they have nukes in underground bunkers. I have put that forth also, because it simply wasn't logical that Ukraine and that Iran did not have nuclear weapons. It's just not believable. I submit the U.S. government, for reasons that are unknown to me, continue to put forth this cover story. We can't allow Iran to get nuclear weapons. Anyone who has a background in military analysis would have told you decades ago Iran already has nukes. So that's going on. Now we have this from CHRISTEFEROU. He's a European journalist. And says that, so President Trump is putting forth several moves. I submit he's going to have to slam dunk Zelensky, stop all money and weapons to Ukraine, and maybe take other measures to secure a position of a governance inside Ukraine, wherein new people can come in. One such person that President Trump apparently is aware of, or possibly has had contacts with, is Yulia Tymoshenko. She is an oil and gas heiress who has been in the past a politician in Ukraine, and in the past had a good relationship with President Putin. So it appears the U.S. Wants to bring about a change of government in Ukraine. And I submit to President Trump, you might want to do it soon before Zelensky murders all of them. And we have this. Yeah. So this Yulia Tymoshenko recently spoke at a meeting of in Europe, and she said the plan for Ukraine was to have a freeze line of the combat and a buffer zone, and that she would come in as a new leader of the Ukraine government. So we'll see how this goes. And we have this. Also from Hal Turner. Yeah, now, Romania, also a full-stop communist government in Europe. So Romania, we saw them throw out their citizen election of a president, Kalen Georgescu, and it's unknown who is the current deep state leader in Romania. And I say to President Trump, why is the U.S. in bed with the communist government? Let's examine what characterizes a communist government. That's when the vote of the people has no value. We have seen that with our own lying eyes. Inside Romania, full stop communism. Why is the U.S. putting the U.S. military in a communist nation? And no doubt giving billions to Romania. That has demonstrated before the world, Romania is now full stop communist. We do not accept the vote of citizens. We're a deep state government. We control what goes on in Romania. Okay, communist. So in this communist nation, Romania, where we have tens of thousands of U.S. military and billions of dollars of U.S. military equipment, and no doubt billions of dollars of U.S. currency paying off and the communist government in Romania. Okay. So the NATO was going to have a spring exercise inside the communist Romania called Dancian Spring 2025. But oh, even though the U.S. sent billions of dollars to Romania to repair the roads, the communist government of Romania received billions of dollars from the U.S. 10 months ago to repair 5 roads that would support the heavy NATO military equipment. But oh, we can't do it. We need about what, 10 or 20 or 50 billion dollars more? And then we'll see. When you're dealing with communists, when you're dealing with the deep state, you have to understand you are dealing directly with the devil. And that's what we see in Romania. Okay. So they didn't get the roads repaired. Therefore, the NATO spring exercise cannot be held. It's being postponed to autumn. And in the autumn, I submit by the autumn, I believe this war in Ukraine is going to be over with. And all these tens of billions of dollars that have been stolen by the commies in Romania will just disappear. Hey. Yeah. So that's going on. And now we have this from Reuters. Pentagon leaks. Yeah. President Trump's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, had to put a senior advisor, Dan Caldwell, on leave while an investigation is taking place about a leak, an unauthorized leak. And this dismissal of Dan Caldwell happened Tuesday, April 15. So that's going on and involves March 21. There was a memo by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, his Chief of Staff, Joe Casper. So in March 21, they began the investigation about the unauthorized leaks. And now apparently that's been tied to Dan Caldwell, who was put outside of the defense building yesterday, April 15. He's on authorized leave. So that's going on. Yeah, President Trump doesn't like leaks. And we have this from Stephen Gardner. Recently, President Trump met with the President Bukele of El Salvador. And President Bukele said he has no problem ignoring what U.S. judges rule, and he will receive any illegals or other criminals President Trump wants to send to El Salvador. So we see real leaders of the world standing up with President Trump to do what is right and reasonable. Now we have this in Iran. Yes, so today is Wednesday. I believe that was last Saturday. There was a meeting in Oman. President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, with some representation by Iran. Do I believe that Iran wants to take out the American people? I believe that Iran has Iranian IRGC, Iranian military, inside the U.S. It's speculated to be possibly tens of thousands, led in by the commie Dems, and that some of this group are assassins who also have as their target President Trump. That's what I believe about Iran. Now, in my last video yesterday, we had WERX saying that right off of our coast, right here, we have an Iranian ship, and the U.S. military believes they have Club K on that Iranian cargo ship. Club K is just a container. It looks like a regular shipping container, and it has a lid that opens, and then the missile launcher comes out. Iran has a ship barely 10 kilometers from our shore, just on the edge of international water. And it's believed they have these missile launchers on that ship. Easily could hit the U.S. or President Trump in Mar-a-Lago. Iran. Iran is not to be trusted. Neither is Ukraine under Zelensky. And now we have this. So yesterday, also NORAD, that's located in Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, tracked Russian planes who is said to came inside the Alaska ID zone. Now, nations have from their coastline out to water so many miles, and that's called their ID zone, their economic zone. They also have a further area out, both in water and in air, from their land area. It's called their ID zone. So it sounds like NORAD was tracking Russian planes right up to our ID zone around Alaska. And we have this currently in the U.S. Now recall, before President Trump was inaugurated in late 2024, we were having hundreds, if not thousands, of reports of drones over many parts of the U.S. and many over New Jersey. So the FAA, get this, yeah, we're now going to test a detection system that can track drones and try to figure out why we had those mystery drones over New Jersey in December. So let's be clear. The FBI, FAA, Federal Aviation Agency of the U.S. government. Don't you believe us? We're now going to put in the air some drone detection devices. We're going to test them. Because in the past, we didn't have them. And you have to believe that the U.S. military, well, hey, they didn't know what those things were either. Now, if you believe that, okay, but I don't believe that. So, I'm totally confident that the U.S. military knew what those drones were over New Jersey, and it's come out. I had multiple sources for that those were actually U.S. military drones, and they were looking for dirty nukes. And I had multiple sources on that, and that also tracks back with me several years and multiple sources. So I found that believable. So this story with the FAA, yeah, we're going to be testing. Okay, that's just a mainstream media line to put out to the people. Okay, now WERX is putting this forth that the U.S. military is pushing nukes out to Europe. And President Trump now wants to fast track, he's calling it nuke production inside the U.S. I submit to you, nuclear weapons are virtually obsolete. They do have selected uses specifically for a nuclear weapon that comes apart and has certain types of fusion. You do need that against certain objects. Generally speaking, nukes are not a good choice for militaries to use because you blow it up, you have all that radiation that comes out, blows back on you and your people. Now, the U.S. military and Russia and China and Iran, I believe, have much more lethal weapons than nukes that don't use that messy use of nuclear material. But these weapons are much more lethal and can be guided and do precision bombing. Now, President Trump wants to fast track making lethal weapons in the U.S., and I agree 100% with that. After God, family, and country, I believe two things keep a nation free. One is a strong educational system. Second is a strong military. And yes, I say to President Trump, we need to bring our troops home from Europe, from that war effort against Russia and Ukraine that really is not going well. We now don't need military, our U.S. military in Europe. We need to bring them home to the homeland to defend us against China and Iran and the cartels. So President Trump wants to fast track making bombs in the U.S. I agree with that. He wants to increase the military budget. I agree with that. And yes, he sent the U.S. military to a buffer zone along California, Arizona, and New Mexico. President Trump cancels Social Security numbers being used by illegals to get money. So he's taking the illegals on several ways. And we have this from Breitbart, from the commie Cuba, right here. Once again, year number 2, Cuba banned the Christian celebration of Palm Sunday. Cuba is commie also. And now we have this. And we have about tariffs. So there are being a lot of talks, and it's believed that President Trump's brilliant economic strategy to destroy China is right on the right road. And President Trump currently has 130 countries who want to talk to him about tariffs. But China doubles down to retaliate against the U.S. It is my position that for some reason China's economy is very dependent upon exports to the U.S. They want to bring in those U.S. dollars. And China stops exporting rare earth minerals to the U.S., which the U.S. uses in the tech industry, auto, and military weapons. And in fact, the U.S. imports 70% of their rare earth minerals from China. I got this to say to President Trump. There are many locations of rare earth minerals on Earth. And as far as the American people coming against you because we might have empty store shelves, based on not receiving those cheap goods from China, I got this to say to President Trump. In World War II, the American people rationed flour and sugar. This Chinese official we heard recently calling the American people peasants. And then we had Pepe Escobar come out and say the Chinese are not warriors. I submit this. The American people are warriors, and we are willing to go as far as we have to down the path to secure America against all enemies, domestic and foreign. And now we have this. The number one owner of farmland in the U.S. is China. Second is Bill Gates Foundation, also a commie deep stater. And these primary areas of land ownership are not being used to produce food. Of course not. China and the deep state Gates want to destroy the economy of America and definitely reduce the population of the American people. Now, President Trump has put this forth, and I agree with that. And other economists are also saying this, that the U.S. should confiscate the U.S. land owned by China and use eminent domain. Now, for my part, this is what I believe. I believe the U.S. should pay China for the land and take it and pass a law that no U.S. land can be owned by a foreigner, nor a foreign government, nor a foreign company. However, in the calculations of how much the U.S. should pay China for this U.S. land should be taken into the calculation how much has China stolen from the U.S., imposing all these tariffs on us for decades and stealing our intellectual property. So that's going on. And now we have this. Yeah, another source, the NATO exercise in commie Romania has to be postponed because the commie Romania, I guess, didn't get to steal as much money as they could to repair roads in Romania. So Romania is going to try and repair roads, 5 roads. It's had 10 months and billions of dollars to repair. It's not done yet, so yeah, we'll have to postpone that NATO exercise from spring to fall. Now let's be clear. How much do you think it costs NATO to put all that equipment and plans and troops together, that this is April, to do the exercise now? I submit it cost NATO billions of dollars to do that. Now everything is halted because the commie government of Romania didn't get to steal enough billions of dollars. So the roads are not usable. So I have this. In a recent video I put forth, and we recall when Jesus was crucified, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He is our role model for forgiveness. And I put forth, when I was young, I had this episode of, hate and unforgiveness. And every morning I would pray and give it to God because I knew it wasn't right for me to keep that inside. And after about 2 weeks, the hate and anger was gone, and in its place was compassion. So I have this from a Patriot subscriber. A few years ago, my best friend and her husband were killed by someone they were trying to help. 2 weeks later, my nephew was shot and killed by a friend he also was trying to help. And you are right. It is good to pursue forgiveness and compassion. And God put me on a path of gratitude and unconditional love and forgiveness and compassion in all circumstances. And she relates, it took her years to get over these traumatic events and arrive at a position where these qualities abide within her. Gratitude, unconditional love, forgiveness, compassion. And she says, God healed my broken heart. And so I say to my family and friends, it's good to pray for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I say remain steady out there, continue to pray. God is in charge and He is on the move. I love you, and I'll see you soon.